Hello and welcome to the second webinar session for the Level 5 Early Years Lead Practitioner. My name is Laura Sykes.
And I'm Gemma Carr.
And we are the tutors delivering the Level 5 apprenticeship. So this session is on B2, the unique child, and also focuses on health and well-being.
So some of the aims that we're going to look at today, so we're going to learn about ethical and the rights-based approaches to support the child and listening to the child's voice, learning about current and contemporary schools of thought and to enable respectful and nurturing personal care routines, as well as looking at the effects of transitions and how to successfully support children and their families. Learning theories of self-regulation, resilience and well-being and the impact of adverse early childhood experiences on the child, as well as looking at finally the current and contemporary approaches in development and emergent literacy and mathematical skills such as synthetic phonics.
So firstly, we're going to talk about ethical rights-based approaches to support the children and how this enables us to listen to the child's voice. So there's a couple of things that we can kind of discuss here, and the first kind of is around equality, diversity and inclusion, and just the importance of this when we are promoting children's and their families' rights within an early years setting.
I think it's important to think about, again, we're talking here specifically about the child's voice and kind of throughout the day. I think it's really important that we're aware of giving the children time to respond to these things and giving them the equality, diversity and inclusion elements that we need to, but also giving them that space to answer to questions and giving them respectful responses from us, as well as giving them, we respect their choices. If they don't want to do something, okay, that's fine, no worries, go off and play somewhere else, or I think you'd really like that, why don't you give it a go later on, something like that, and kind of including options for them, but that's not set in stone. They don't have to do this activity, they don't, you know, it's not a requirement that they do this activity, they can just join in with it. And also thinking about the ages of the children that we're asking them, when we're asking them to do things, giving them time to respond, because if we're asking them a long question, it might take them a little bit longer to respond. So giving them that time to sort of have a think about how they want to respond to us and giving them the time to do so.
Absolutely. And sometimes we need to break that question down, like, so depending on the age of the child, we might be able to give them 3 instructions at once, but we might need to just kind of give them one or ask one question rather than multiple at a time. So yeah, really important. And that kind of links in with kind of morals there, and respecting children's choices, but also in terms of the word consent. So kind of children give consent for their nappies to be changed, for example. And this is something I've seen quite a lot and more often within early years practice.
Definitely, I see it in a lot of settings now, sort of at nappy changing time. It is, you know, we've lived the life of, right, 28 nappies all done at once, 1 2 3 4 5 done. But now it's kind of the, right, Harry, let's go do your nappy, are you okay to be changed today, do you want to get your nappy yourself, those kind of things. We're asking those children those questions, but similarly at the same time we have all been in those situations where the child's gone no, because they're too busy playing with such and such, they're too busy doing something else, and they keep saying no to you. Every time you ask for a nappy change, they say no. So we kind of need to be aware of what to do in those situations as well, and think about how do we manage that. And it's kind of that thinking about that behaviour element as well, and kind of that timer. Okay, that's fine, I'll go and do such and such's nappy first, and then we'll come back and do yours. Here's a timer, when the timer runs out, we'll do your nappy. Or kind of bringing in those behavioural ways, because obviously children need their nappies changed.
Absolutely, and it's something that we can almost give them a little bit of leeway in terms of the choice of when they get their nappy done. If they can be next, then that's fine, but there are times when you do need to change them. So yeah, kind of that debate around consent is really interesting, like I say, kind of how we manage that, what strategies we use. But we are going to get to a point where if a child is saying no, 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 we will need to change them, and just kind of thinking about how we're going to manage that, and of course within that kind of lead practitioner role, supporting the team with how they're going to manage that as well.
Yeah, another one I've heard of recently is sort of the consent of photographs. So instead of, I mean, obviously when we do our starting paperwork, when the child first enrolls with us, there would be the, are they allowed on Facebook? Are they allowed in other people's observations, things like that? But actually, in-house, asking the children, can I take a photo of you whilst you're doing your colouring?
Mm-hmm.
The question for me is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Absolutely.
Is that morally, is it correct to ask the child? Yes, it probably is. But actually, at the same time, we've all been in those situations where as soon as a camera or an iPad or whatever comes in front of a child and they know it's there, they stop what they're doing, turn around, pull a cheesy face, cheese, So it's that, what's the line?
Absolutely. And then we've interrupted what they were doing as well. So we've interrupted that play and kind of where they were in that process. So consent is one of those kind of debate topics, and definitely kind of an interesting topic, and kind of links that morals as well as kind of leading into ethics, really. So when it comes to ethics, like I say, we're taking photos, we're carrying out observations of the children. As a lead practitioner, you will have a kind of younger members of staff that are new to early years, apprentices or students, and they will have to carry out observations and projects, longitudinal studies as part of their kind of programs that they're on, and then there's that ethics there as well of them being carried out.
And I think as lead practitioner, it's your role to say, have you checked with the parent that they are happy for you to do this longitudinal study? Are you happy? Have you spoken to the parents so that they're happy to be included within your assignments in whatever way that is? It's not just that assumption that I've given an example, so I'm assuming that's okay. It's knowing 100% from the parent that that's okay to have those observations and them brought into your studies. And for ethics to me always brings up the safeguarding and a whistleblowing issue. Not issue. If you have an issue with something someone's done and ethically you don't feel that's correct, for me that means you need to go to your designated safeguarding lead.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to kind of voice that to your staff and the team around you, and kind of know that if you think, oh, that's not quite right, then that turns into a safeguarding or whistleblowing element.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
And that links directly to that rights of the child. We need to make sure that we're keeping the children safe, and that falls into that. So very much kind of equality, diversity, inclusion, morals, ethics and rights of the child kind of links all together there with those different approaches we need to be aware of as a practitioner, but also as a lead practitioner. So the next kind of topic really is around respectful nurturing care routines, and this kind of links to what we were just talking about really in terms of consent, in terms of respecting the children's rights, but also we need to very respect their privacy as well, which is also really important, and kind of linked to the safeguarding that you mentioned, Gemma, as well, because it is really important that we're respecting that privacy that they've got when it comes to self-care.
I think it's also, again, like we kind of just said, like we've worked in settings where nappy time, 11 o'clock, right, all nappies need doing, quick, get everyone done, 2 people, 1 person goes off, does all the nappies, done, dusted. That was that was great. We did that in 20 minutes, winner. But actually, what has the child achieved from this? What bond has been made? What attachment's been made? What support's been given to the child? Has there actually been any care given at any point? Or has it just been a process of whip that nappy off, stick another one on, all's good? Quick scribble it on the chart. It's not, we need to be aware of kind of why settings promote the key worker doing those care routines. But also for you as lead practitioners, is that manageable? Is that realistic? Is that something that you can do 100% of the time within your setting? And I think that's an important question for you to ask yourselves. Are we making sure the key person is doing that nappy change? Why are we making sure that key person is doing that nappy change? Do the staff know why the key person is doing that nappy change? And what's the purpose of a nappy change?
Absolutely, and that is why it's nurturing care routines. It's that quality interaction, and it needs to be in an ideal world the key person every time. But as Gemma said, sometimes in practice it'll be difficult to do that. But then we need to decide how we're going to do that. Is it going to be the co-key person then, or is it just going to be anybody? So it's kind of having a think really about kind of the procedures you have in your setting around respectful and nurturing care routines. Are they respectful? Are they nurturing? And are there any kind of changes or improvements that you feel that you could make within that lead practitioner role to support with that?
I think it's also that again, you're in that lead role. You should be the ones training up the new staff when they're doing the nappy changing policies, procedures. You're the one training that staff member up to do those nappy changes. So how are you promoting that these are done respectfully? How are you promoting that these are done carefully, nurturing? How is that being done? And that's on you to kind of enforce with your team as well.
Absolutely.
One other thing, sorry, was that often we think about care routines, we think about nappy changing. That's automatically what we go to. It's not just nappy changing, is it? We're talking meal times, snack times, sleep routines, anything where care should be being given. And again, that's it. How are you doing your lunches? How are you doing your snack times? Is it a case of, right, everybody, here's your food. Okay, you can eat. No, quiet, please. This is, you should be eating. You shouldn't be talking. Food is a social time. We need to be promoting that, those kind of things. So it's that, again, bringing in that nurturing is your key word throughout all of your care routines, no matter what care routine that is.
Absolutely. And as that lead practitioner, you are ensuring those procedures are being followed, but also you're that role model. As Jim said, you need to be making sure that you are carrying out respectful and nurturing care routines for your colleagues to observe and then copy ultimately. We want to make sure that children are supported during these times. And as Gemma said, it's not just nappy changing, it's toilet training, formula feeds, sun cream procedures. There's so much to care routines, those daily care routines that some children will need that we need to be aware of.
Even that, wiping noses, those kind of things, isn't it? Are we asking the child, oh, can you just pop over here, we just need to wipe your nose a minute, is that okay? Before you just slap a tissue across their face and hope that you got something. It's being aware of that, prioritising that nurturing element of it, and also bringing in the partnership working. So partnership working of it, why is it that the key person does this? This child is slightly anxious, they're very nervous coming in the morning. Maybe they need it to be that key person to always be there to do that with them. Yes, they will go off and play, but actually care routines need to be the key person that they know and trust. Have that partnership for toilet training, all those kind of things as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think partnership working is working with each other in the setting, the key people, but also working with the parents. They're the ones that are going to tell us about these care routines and the ways and the children's preferences, the way that they like things to be done. And so it's ideal for the key person to know that and then be able to share that back with the parents when it does come to these kind of respectful and nurturing care routines.
Yeah, definitely. So the next thing we're going to kind of bump onto is talking about transitions and how to successfully support children and their families. So often from our side, we talk to learners and we say, okay, what transitions do you go through? Oh, the children have all just gone off to school in September. Okay. And the children, that means then they're moving through their setting. Okay. What about other transitions? So it's being aware of all of these other transitions and how they can affect the child. So on the screen you can see quite a few different types of transitions that we've thought of. That list is not the only list of them. There is many more in there. One of the ones that I kind of wanted to talk about is actually day-to-day transitions throughout your day, whether you've got your going from inside to going outside, you've got lunchtime, you've got snack time, you've got going home time, you've got these transitions throughout the day. But one of my biggest ones that I often see in nurseries and I've promoted in working in settings is tidy up time. I don't know your thoughts on it, Laura, but I personally don't agree with a tidy up time. So sort of setting that time, right, everybody stop, tidy up time, put everything you're doing and absolutely love playing with right now, all of it goes away because we're all going to sit down and have a snack, or we're all going to go into the garden. It's kind of questioning, is that actually right for the child? Is that helping or hindering the child? Or should we be teaching the children to, okay, you finished playing with that toy, let's put all of those blocks away now, and then you can go into the home corner and play with something, and encouraging that child to tidy up when they finish playing with certain things. I've also worked in settings where things have been left out overnight. So they've just loved playing, you know, they've got a massive train track built around the room, and they were like, we really want to play with this tomorrow. Great, 4 of you are all back tomorrow, let's leave it out for the day, leave it out overnight. No one's coming in. So why can't you leave that out overnight for them to come back in and just be excited to come back to play with that train set or whatever it is they've had? So kind of, for me, that's a really hot topic, and I think is something that you as a level 5 should really think about within your rooms. Are we stopping the children's play and discouraging them from what they're loving and from what they're playing with, for the convenience of us not having to tidy up with them and us not having to teach them to tidy up?
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. I've seen it done in lots of different ways. I've seen, like I say, kind of the tidy up time with a tidy up song, and this is now when we're going to tidy away. But I've also seen it done, like I say, the other way, where we tidy up as we go and we encourage the children to do that. And you know, from my perspective, I think that is important. You know, we're teaching children British values, boundaries, how to look after their resources, how to keep their friends safe because they're not going to fall over, you know, kind of the resources that have been left out. But that does come down to deployment of the team, and is everybody spread out enough so that we can talk to the children about tidying up as they go, or are we able to do that? You know, is it something that we can do within practice? So yeah, I agree with Gemma. As a level 5 lead practitioner, it's kind of a chance for you to think about it, have discussions with your colleagues, and think of the best way when it comes to that daily transition of tidying up. You know, how often are the children doing this?
So another one for me is kind of thinking, we were just sort of talking about equality, diversity, inclusion, morals, ethics, you know, the rights of the child, and is that kind of that rolling snack time as well. So again, a lot of settings are bringing in rolling snack now, not having a right, everybody stop, everybody sit down, everybody has snack, you must all sit down for snack. It's right, the snack table's open, come over, choose a piece of fruit and crumpet or whatever you might have, you know, come and choose what you'd want for snack. Sit down at the table. Yes, sit down at the table if you're eating, of course. But actually, I've also worked in a lot of settings where children go, I'm not actually hungry yet. I had three bowls of cereals at home. I've had a massive bowl of porridge. It's only 10 o'clock. I'm not actually hungry yet. I'll be okay until lunch. And again, it's giving that child the autonomy to say, I don't want that now. I'm quite fine, actually, I'll be okay. You can say to them, why don't you just go and have a glass of water, a glass of milk? But again, having that rolling time so they don't feel like they have to stop what they're doing, again, could well bring in more behaviour concerns, things like that as well. So it's that another thing that you could possibly think about as kind of that transition, is kind of to cut out a transition, especially if you've got a lot of SEND, a lot of behavioural concerns. It could be one transition that you stop and cut out and kind of make it a lot easier for you and your staff.
Absolutely, I agree. It's something that I've seen work really well in some settings that I've been into, in terms of a rolling snack and a snack bar, and the children come up independently and get everything they need and tidy it away afterwards. So again, embedding those British values and kind of boundaries around when we're having snack and what we need to do. So yeah, I think it can work really well, but it's something, again, like I say, one of those transitions, you know, maybe as a level 5 lead practitioner, also think about how many transitions your children do actually go through in the day, and having a look at the impact that has on their free flow play is always quite interesting to have a look into.
Yeah.
So for me, kind of, there's lots of different transitions, but something that kind of impacted on me as a practitioner when I was working in a setting was bereavement. So I actually kind of worked with a family that unfortunately a parent passed away while the children were in the setting. So it was quite traumatic for both the children, the family, but also the staff, because everybody kind of knew this parent quite well, and it was quite difficult to manage the support that we kind of needed to. We did do it, and we did it to the best of our ability, but it was as I can kind of say, quite traumatic to kind of support these two children that unfortunately then lost a key caregiver, so kind of a parent. so quickly and so suddenly. You know, it wasn't planned, it just suddenly happened one day, and it was then putting everything in place to support the children, but also to support the family, as there was another parent with a few more children as well. So it was just trying to support everybody together, all at once within the setting.
What were some of the things that you did to support them?
There was a couple of things. So we got a lot of advice and guidance from the Child Bereavement UK site. Lots of really valuable information on there that we used. And a lot of it was about giving the children time to talk about how they were feeling, what they were feeling, allowing them to be upset, allowing them to be cross, allowing them to kind of express those emotions. We did things like kind of planting a tree in the garden for the children, so they had that there that they could go to in the time they were in the setting. We also invited the family in to kind of help us plant that as well. So it is really important that we work together, you know, to kind of support them. And there are so many different strategies, including a lot of books out there as well, because there were older children in the family as well. We were able to recommend some books that were for older children through kind of the research that we carried out as a team.
Yeah, definitely. Was there any outside agencies involved, or was it just you supporting the parents and guiding the family and sort of guiding them?
So they did have like a play therapist that kind of supported all of the children, actually the whole family, and I believe that was put through the doctors, but it was something that we were able to support with and kind of communicate with them how the younger two were getting on in the setting. So yeah, definitely because some multi-agency working going on there, which was really important for the children, and I think that's quite common with transitions, you know, these severe transition, these significant events, is working in partnership with others, finding out what other agencies are involved, so that we can do our best to support the children, you know, during these transitions.
Yeah, definitely.
So kind of something that we need to be aware of is self-regulation, co-regulation, emotional intelligence and resilience. And this actually directly links to kind of transitions that we were just talking about. The more we can support children to build up resilience to change, when these transitions do happen or change happens, they'll be able to better deal with it. You know, they'll have strategies to kind of deal with these. So co-regulation is really important, kind of where it starts really. So this is kind of relying on the people closest to us really to help us regulate our emotions. And if a baby, so a child, has been strongly supported with co-regulation, it leads on to them being able to self-regulate their emotions and develop that emotional intelligence as well, which is kind of that understanding of emotions, what they are, why we feel them, how we feel them, and what we can do to kind of change that emotion as well. So it's important within early years that we support children with this kind of regulation of their own emotions within kind of practice. So kind of as a lead practitioner, you know, it's about you kind of role modeling that again, but also supporting your team to understand the importance of supporting children with these kind of strategies, particularly when it comes to personal, social and emotional development.
Very interestingly, I found a study about personal, social and emotional development within children, following on from the coronavirus pandemic. So this was a study completed by Anna Freud, that was a study of over 900 childcare staff and parents. And what was found was, there was quite a few interesting ones here, but actually all relating to things that we've actually already spoken about. So there was greater separation anxiety and issues in forming relationships with staff, children becoming more emotional and difficulty with managing their own emotions, children exhibiting more disruptive and challenging behaviours, children experience greater issues socialising with one another, children developing an obsession with cleaning hands, fear of germs and the virus, children becoming upset over lost connections to family and friends, including 12% becoming bereaved, and children experience various developmental delays and or regressions. So this is all from the pandemic. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone who works in childcare, but it is quite important for you to be aware of, and how you are supporting those children who have lived through the pandemic, and or even just towards the end of the pandemic now, isn't it? You know, and thinking about how they are affected is, you know, you may have had an older sibling who was pre-pandemic and then a child who's sort of post-pandemic, and what are the differences between that child? How are you supporting that younger child, because they are quite clearly very different, they're struggling with certain things. And how many children in your setting do you think, of that list that I've just read off, have you gone, yes, they are doing all of those things, they are struggling with all of those things, and kind of being aware of how you are promoting that and encouraging that personal, social, and emotional development within your setting, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really valid point to make, and quite often I hear the term COVID babies or COVID child, you know, because they are children that have gone through that and, like you say, kind of experienced it. And, you know, it's definitely something that we need to be aware of. And again, like you say, as a level 5 lead practitioner, what is the kind of impact on that, and what kind of strategies do you need to then put in place to support children and their families, you know, in regards to kind of regulating those emotions within early years.
So going on from that, I kind of want you to kind of have a bit of reflection time, really, and kind of for us to kind of have a bit of a chat about what we've seen in settings, and what we've put in place in settings, or what we've just seen throughout looking through different nurseries. So how do you promote each of these support systems, the self-regulation, co-regulation? How do you support this within your setting? What are some of the things that you do? So I've put a few images here to kind of just spark thoughts, ideas. So some things I've kind of seen is a lot of settings now are doing like a yoga, a meditation, a quiet time, more often in the older rooms where they don't have that sleep time. So instead of sort of sitting down and reading in the book corner, it might just be a case that they have a bit of a yoga time after lunch, or they just have that quiet time to kind of just sit and lie down, listen to a story that's just a bit more of a meditation story, but also sparking imagination. So they are quite lovely, some of the stories that you can find online, because it's that kind of, you know, we're taking a walk in the woods and now we're seeing some birds. So again, it's supporting that imagination element as well as supporting their personal, social, emotional development and that regulation of everything. So that's one thing that I've seen. Laura, what have you seen?
So I've seen a lot of lovely kind of like boxes. So like whether that's a calming box, some settings I've seen use bucket time as part of additional needs, but then create these kind of calming boxes that have got lots of lovely things in them, you know, different fidget toys or light up resources or sensory resources, that if a child is feeling overwhelmed with emotion, that then they're able to get this to calm down, and once they've calmed down, then having that conversation. And I think this is a fantastic idea because as we know, if a child has got really overwhelmed, upset, angry, you're not going to be able to talk to them when they're at that high point, you know, because they are feeling all that emotion. They've got to calm down for you then to be able to talk to them, and this just enables them to give them this space to be able to do this.
I think for me, one thing that's really important also is us as practitioners kind of coming down to the children, talk to me about this, how are you feeling, what's going on, why are you feeling like this, and allowing that child to cry, boy or girl, allowing that child to cry, get those emotions out and acknowledging those emotions. And I think it's also having that conversation with the parents very openly to say they are struggling with anger and they've told me that this is what's happening, or they are struggling, they're very sad because, I don't know, grandparents just passed away, something like that. But those conversations with the parents need to be happening as well, because sometimes the parents might not even be aware of it. They might just feel actually the child's just going off to have their own quiet time and they think, oh great, I'll go and get dinner started or something like that. But actually that child is removing themselves and having their own quiet time because they feel that's what they need.
Yeah.
And to talk to those parents about that, and that's what the child's doing. Or it could be ways to support the parent if they're struggling with those outbursts as well. So kind of, this is how we do the quiet time, this is how we have the bucket time, this is, you know, they quite like the sensory lights, those kind of things, to enable the parents to also have that at home, to make a little bucket for them at home, And then it's that consistency as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that communication is important, but we also need to make sure that it's age appropriate communication, whether we're working with babies, toddlers, preschool children, and that we're making sure that the children are able to understand what we're saying. And emotions are complex. It's a complex thing to talk about. Really challenging. Sometimes children might not know why they feel a certain way. They just know that that's how they're feeling. And we need to make sure that we're valuing and respecting that. We've got that empathy, and we are listening.
There's a lot of activities happening, I know, as well. And sort of the Colour Monster is a book that a lot of learners use. The Colour Monster, kind of being able to talk about the different colours and the different emotions. There's the Inside Out films, isn't there? That's a very hot topic at the moment as well. And kind of, I think that's a really good way for children to kind of start thinking about emotions. Again, that's probably more for the older children. But again, that is a way for them to know what those emotions are and to see those emotions outside of themselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen some really lovely activities from people where they've done that. Like you say, they've kind of used the Colour Monster, they've used the Inside Out movie, and I think it is a really good way to support children to understand emotions, is by linking it to those colours and to things that are relevant for them. So moving on to just kind of have a bit of a discussion about adverse childhood experiences. So this kind of links to change and transitions, but more so with those significant events. So an adverse childhood experience is when a child has experienced physical, sexual or emotional abuse. So something very significant and we need to be aware of this if a child has had an adverse early childhood experience. So this can link to lots of different things. And I have got an example to share with you. So I kind of worked in a setting where we had children that were brought into us and unfortunately they were taken out of their parents' care and put with their nan. So a big change, suddenly going from one family home to another, and the police actually were involved with this situation, and so quite often the children would share with us that the police gave them a fruit shoot, which was the main thing that they kind of spoke about and held on to. So these two children were kind of preschool age and were able to communicate kind of what they were feeling and what they were thinking. They, like I say, they were with their nans, they were with somebody that they knew, but still a very challenging time for them, and definitely an adverse childhood experience there.
I think as professionals ourselves, we need to be aware that experience that they had when they were 4 or 5 years old, they may forget specifics of it because sort of the brain sort of blocks out those memories, that traumatic experience, but they remember that fruit shoot moment. But they remember the fact that those parents left them, and they remember that this could happen again, and this could happen in any relationship that they now go into for the rest of their life. And that's where we need to support them, and we need to remind them that we are here for them, we can support them, we will look after them, we will be here for them, and we need to be that solid base for them so that later on in life they can start to acknowledge all of this and be aware of it going into new relationships and those sorts of things as well. I think, isn't it, it's very effective for the rest of their life, isn't it? Something that happens at 4 and 5 will go through the rest of their life.
Absolutely, yeah. There's these long-term effects when it comes to adverse childhood experiences because they have been so significant. And for these children, they had a social worker, they received play therapy. There was lots of things put in place to support them with those emotions, with those feelings, and kind of what they've gone through. Let's say they had their nans, they had that kind of key person there and that they were very attached to, but still there's going to be those impacts, and like I said, those long-term impacts are something that we need to be aware of. Like I say, when it comes to them developing relationships, it is really important that we're aware how much of an impact these experiences can have on a child and what things we can put in place to support them.
So we're going to go on and talk about sort of maths and literacy within your setting and kind of what that looks like. And again, this is going to kind of pull into some of my experiences in working in a variety of nurseries and kind of thinking about the old school way to the new school way. And so often I used to walk into settings and it'll be, this is the maths corner, this is the literacy corner, you know, or this is the literacy table today, we've set this up with such and such, just literacy activities. And in my head you go, but it's in everything. It's not just letters, it's not just numbers. We need to be talking about maths and literacy holistically throughout everything we're doing. And again, throughout my time assessing and kind of observing learners, they don't know they're doing it, but they are. They are bringing maths and literacy into kind of everything they're doing. They're not consciously thinking, I have to bring maths into this. It does just happen. But also I kind of just want to kind of make you aware, to kind of make your staff aware that it isn't just the simple numbers and shapes. It's not just the reading and writing in settings. We're talking about speaking and listening, the way we're speaking and listening to the children, the Macathon that we're using with the children. That is all to do with literacy. Regarding maths and numeracy, it's not just the counting and numbers. Shapes, we're talking about problem solving, just shape sorters in the baby room. Often the baby room is forgotten about when it comes to maths and literacy. Even just having clocks on the wall, just having representation of maths in the room is really important. Patterns of wallpaper is a classic one, isn't it? Which again, a lot of settings don't have wallpaper anymore, I'm finding, but that is there, you know, even in the houses, things like that. Repetitive patterns are things that should be seen, and I think it's important that you as a level 5 are being able to communicate this to your staff as to what maths and literacy looks like and can be used in every single activity without trying.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's definitely something that I've kind of observed. I've been in some settings where they have got maths and literacy areas, others do it more holistically, and I think kind of either one kind of works, but I think you're right, it's about knowing as a lead practitioner how maths and literacy are embedded across the board, how we're always embedding it in what we do, with all of the age groups. And sometimes it is just about having those discussions, because once you start talking about everything that literacy is, everything that numeracy is, it just explodes when you're talking to people and they realise how broad it is. And it is really important to realise that it is just so naturally embedded to everything that we do, and it is so important for children's learning and development.
Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that I felt that the maths area was wrong or the literacy area was wrong. If you have got those areas, that's it's not a wrong, in inverted commas, thing. It's just a different way of doing it, and I kind of just want people to kind of just be aware, have the awareness that it is in everything. You know, that wasn't me saying there's the right or the wrong. It's just, and actually in a lot of settings it's quite handy having the corners because all of the maths is in one space. I think also talking about scaffolding learning is, you know, that's all comes through into the maths and literacy element as well, doesn't it? And kind of how we're scaffolding that, and again, things that probably most of your staff just do as well naturally without even, some of them may not even know the definition of scaffolding, but they're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Yeah, through activities, through resources, through open discussions, open questions, lots of way that we're supporting that scaffolding. But maybe something to look out for and see if you can see when, you know, when your team are doing that, when they are scaffolding that learning, when they are asking those questions to support that sustained shared thinking, and then highlighting that with your team so that they kind of know that that is what it is.
Yeah, I think definitely acknowledging that, really well done. You know, you've casually just scaffolded that child's learning, and again, they may not even know what it is, but praising them for that and that acknowledgement of it, or just the acknowledgement of well done for using maths in that. I wasn't expecting that to be so mathsy or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looking at the language and the terms we're using, you know, with our colleagues. So kind of a part of the emergent literacy kind of skills is phonics. Here within the UK we tend to use synthetic phonics, and this is something that we use to support our children with the learning of reading. You can see kind of on the PowerPoint that there's some different strategies and different terms when it comes to phonics, but there are lots of fun ways to kind of learn phonics now.
One that jumps to mind, it's not my favourite, but that's not on what it is. That's more the process that nurseries have taken to teach it. So for me, Jolly Phonics, it might be a little bit old school now, actually, I think, is possibly, but I always remember sitting down with the preschool children, right, circle time, Jolly Phonics, and you just roll through the alphabet, doing all the actions and singing the songs. And it's that question of, do the children actually know these phonics, or are they just repeating this cycle that you do with them every single day, rolling through? Do they actually know what it is they're doing? Do they understand sort of, I think it's important for the children to understand why they're doing these things, but it is that kind of like, are they just, you're doing these actions on your arm or whatever, and are they just saying noises at you? Are they actually learning from it? Yeah. Or is it, we've spoken about sort of alpha blocks, the TV show Alpha and number blocks.
Yes, number blocks and alpha blocks.
So it's kind of like, is that now a way to go as a TV show? Is that something more engaging for the children? Is that something that you can bring in as part of like your digital literacy and kind of including that? You found another one as well, wasn't there?
Yeah. So alpha blocks, number blocks, absolutely. And I have kind of heard that is starting to be used in some local schools, actually, to kind of support them in reception, kind of going on to year one, to kind of get used to those phonics sounds. But yeah, I've also heard of monster phonics, and that's another fun way to teach children phonics. There's lots of lovely videos, and again, it links colours to the sound, and I quite like that because we've already spoken about colours and emotions, and it kind of is quite a nice link there with colour that the children do understand at that age when they're learning phonics, and linking it to the sounds that they kind of need to learn. So yeah, it's kind of some newer ways of trying to support children with phonics and learning those skills to be able to read.
So thinking about that, the alpha blocks and the monster phonics, I think it brings us back to literacy and digital literacy as well. Like, I get that a lot of nurseries don't want the digital element, but actually we can't deny the fact that it is very much in our world. It's here. The children have iPads, tablets, phones, TV screens. They are using all of them. So actually, why not use it to our advantage, use it on an educational element? One thing for me also is kind of thinking about the development of the child. So being aware of that actually some sounds the child may not perfect until they're 7, 8, 9. So the sound of the S may not actually be developed in our time with them before they go to school. But that isn't something that we should be worried about. That isn't something we should even be berating the child for. That is something that we've just got to let happen. So for me, it's the question of what activities are you doing and how are you supporting this development of the child's mouth, linguistics? How are you supporting the child's development with these activities? What are you doing? So I've seen sort of some activities do sort of blowing through straw activities, blowing like a pom-pom across the table or something like that. Have you seen any activities that can promote it?
So the main one that jumps to mind for me is the Mr. Tongue Book, and it's something that we always use specifically with children with speech and language delays. So it's something that the speech and language therapist gave to us as a strategy, and we then found that we were using it with a lot of the children because it was getting them I guess used to mouth movements that then kind of help them with kind of pronouncing words and that understanding of it. But I think it's a really valid point to make that we need to be aware, are they capable of that, or are we trying to get them to do something that they're not actually able to do?
I feel this could easily turn into the school readiness discussion as well. But one thing I would actually quite like as a level 5 learner is you to kind of think about, obviously you are engaging with these outside agencies, specifically with speech and language. Most nurseries are in touch with a speech and language therapist in one way or another. So I think it would actually be really good for you to kind of have those conversations with your speech and language therapist when you next see them, or when you next email them, or whatever, and just say, could you give me some hints and tips that we can use throughout the setting, not just for this one specific child that we're supporting, but is there any good packs that you've got, ideas, activities, things like that, that could just be really good for you to include within your setting as the everyday?
Absolutely. And maybe also ask them about those digital resources. You know, like I say, there is a place for it, and there is a big debate around digital resources, digital skills, screen time. But there is a place for it, and there are some really lovely resources out there. You know, Monster Phonics, Alpha Blocks. You know, there's some different games that you can get for the iPad. There are these resources out there, so it might be worth speaking to some professionals about any particular digital resources that they would recommend.
Definitely.
That is kind of coming to the end of our session today. So learning aims and objectives. So we hope that we've kind of introduced these topics for you. So understanding ethical and rights-based approaches, understanding current and contemporary schools of thought relating to respectful and nurturing personal care, the effects of transition and how this can be supported in the setting, theories of self-regulation and resilience, and how again we can support that, as well as understanding the impact of adverse early childhood experiences, and finally the current and contemporary approaches in the development of literacy and numeracy skills.
We've got some useful resources here that you can have a look at, sort of find out a little bit, and kind of develop on further for your written work, for your assignments. This is just a starting point. These are some things that we have found useful, we have found beneficial. Within all of these links, there is further links that you can kind of go into rabbit holes and find out that little bit more. And if you do find things that you find are useful, please send them on to myself and Laura, and we would love to review them. Thank you very much for your time today.